Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Andrew. Just so you know, I'm filming one intro and using it for all of these questions. So if you've seen the intro before or just want to skip to the philosophical questions and thought exercises, I'm going to timestamp each video so that you can jump around if you so choose. Those will be in the description, and that way you can save 2 minutes of your life for each of these videos you watch. And as always, I just want to say that I respect your beliefs when it comes to religion, and I believe you should be allowed to have those beliefs. I don't lose respect no matter what you believe. You can believe in one God, many gods, all the gods, or no gods, and my respect does not change for you. The only time I have a problem is if someone decides they should dictate how I should live my life because they are better than me, because they believe whatever it is they believe. And so I must believe it too. Now, I will say that I did mean it this way the whole time. However, I may not have articulated this properly. That can mean religious or non-religious people dictating what I have to believe because they believe it. And I have unfortunately experienced both from multiple people. And to those people, I would just say, respect others' beliefs as you wish yours be respected. That's really how we should just go about it. Now, I'm not trying to change your mind with any of these philosophical points and thought experiments. I am just putting them out there into the ether, and you may think about them or not. That's up to you. Totally up to you. I do think that it is always good to try and think about things from other perspectives. And, who knows, maybe one, two, or all of these can help people do that if they're open to trying. And these are just things I've been randomly thinking about, some of them for months, some of them for years, some of them for decades. I'm aware some of these are going to be crazy, out there ideas that you're going to immediately, on principle alone, reject. Just wait about the one about heaven and hell. That being said, try to see these from both sides and see if you can make an argument for each. At the end of the day, they're just thought experiments. I'm not trying to trick you with anything or convince you of anything. The way I see it, these are just mental puzzles for our brains. If you choose not to participate in thinking about these, no problem. That's your choice. If you do, the worst you will have done is potentially challenge some of your preconceived notions, and more than likely not, concluded that you were probably right all along in the end. Either way, you exercise your mind, and I believe that is the one part of the body everyone should be exercising daily, and it is also the one part of the body that, unfortunately, a large portion of our population tends to neglect. Okay, so for this one, I'm actually combining two questions, but they're basically around the same theme, so I'm going to combine them here. So the first one is, what if Christianity had moved away from the Old Testament and only used the New Testament in their religion? Now, a lot of people wonder, how important is the Old Testament compared to the New Testament when it comes to Catholicism? And the Roman Catholic Church has a catechism on this, actually multiple, and a catechism is a way to instruct Christians, usually in the form of a question being answered, and this question is, how important is the Old Testament to modern Catholics? I'm not going to read the whole answer here. I'm just going to sum up the first and last part because I think it is the most important. If you want to find this yourself, you can. It's Catechism of the Catholic Church 121 123, and I'll put that above my head somewhere too. And this is right from the catechisms themselves. The Old Testament is an indispensable part of sacred scripture. Its books are divinely inspired and retain a permanent value, for the Old Covenant has never been revoked. And at the end it goes on to say, Christians venerate the Old Testament as true word of God. The Church has always vigorously opposed the idea of rejecting the Old Testament under the pretext that the New has rendered it a void. So, a lot of Christian sects share a similar view. Most of them just have a slightly different value on just how closely it should be followed. And so the question is, what if from the beginning Christianity only followed the New Testament? Now, I would allow them in that case to add a little bit more to it if necessary, maybe a slightly more modernized view of the Ten Commandments and other important rules included within the Old Testament. However, otherwise the teaching of Christianity would be that although they respect the Old Testament, they would only consider the New Testament as the base for their religion. And so my question would be, how would Christianity look different? Do you think it would be better, worse, or roughly the same as it is now? And maybe if you can think about it, what is one aspect you can think of specifically that you believe would be significantly different, whether it would be a part of the Bible at church or in the basic foundation of the Vatican? And so that's the first question. The second question is, and again, it kind of surrounds the same theme. What if Christianity had chosen that Jesus was just a man instead of the Son of God? In other words, he is not divine. So in this case, let's pretend for this that Jesus was not the Son of God, he's just a man. He was born exactly how he was in the Bible, maybe for a different reason than why they were in Bethlehem. I talked about this in other videos. The reason he was given in the Bible was just a way to get him there to fulfill a prophecy. That prophecy is in the Old Testament, but now because there is no Old Testament, there is no prophecy. Also, no angels talk to Mary or Joseph or anyone else, but he would still be born in a manger, and it would be as close to the same story as possible, just removing any of the divine aspects. As he grows up, he follows essentially the same story as the Bible. He helps heal people, but doesn't specifically perform miracles like walking on water or bringing people back from the dead. He still teaches, mainly through parables, still touching on, love, forgiveness, God's kingdom, prayer, redemption, and even the end times. Again, it basically follows the same story, just it writes out the divine parts of that story, making him purely human. Now, God sees the great work that Jesus is doing and is very, very impressed by him. His strength, his wisdom is very impressive to God. But unfortunately, God knows what the end result will be for Jesus, so he has a plan. He contacts Jesus, maybe through some sort of test that, although Jesus struggles, eventually passes. And so he speaks to him and explains what's going to happen to him, and explains that he will, at the end, be granted God's power if he so chooses. Jesus asks why, and God explains that although Jesus will be seen as a man, he will also be seen as a son of God, and by sacrificing himself that day, he would take the punishment for all of humanity's sins. Now that day comes and God gives him that power. Again, this is another test to see if he would stop his own crucifixion or actually sacrifice himself. Jesus struggles heavily with this decision and is very close to saving himself, but something stops him. He feels he could have a bigger purpose, and in that moment becomes the Son of God. At that point, as a reward, God grants him divine power, and after he dies, he returns, creating an almost exact story to that of the Easter story we know now. Now, my questions would be, do you think that would make for a better story? Why or why not? Do you think it would change things in the New Testament significantly, or would it still maintain similar themes throughout? And lastly, and I think most importantly probably, would Jesus be a better inspirational role model as he is now, or as he is if he was just a man? So again, I'm going to give you a couple seconds. You can head off this video now. Again, there will always be timestamps, so if you want to think about it, and then you can come back, you can jump right to this point in the video. Okay, so I'm going to answer these separately. So for the first one, what if it was just the New Testament? I am going to speculate how Christianity would look different, but I'm going to do it in a slightly roundabout way, so bear with that. I'm going to leave it to you to think about, oh, well, if we didn't have this belief from the Old Testament, what would we have instead, type of thing. I'm going to talk about it more in terms of people surrounding the religion. Most people that I've talked to that were Christian and moved away from it, or are on the fence and thinking about moving away from it, or have thought about becoming Christian and didn't, it was because of problematic teachings in the Bible. Now, when I've asked people which teachings they're talking about, probably a good 90 to 95% have been all teachings in the Old Testament that contradict with modern moralities and social norms. Now, obviously, that's not a very good study. I haven't really talked to many people, and this is just what I've seen and what I've heard. So take that number with a grain of salt, but I do think that a lot of the issues that a lot of people have are more come from within the Old Testament rather than the New Testament. Now, that's not saying that the New Testament is by any means perfect. There are some problematic things within it too. However, I feel, and most of the people I've talked to feel, that the majority of them are in the Old Testament. Not only that, but there are a lot of contradictory teachings between the Old and New Testament. One person I knew explained it perfectly to me, and they said it's almost like they're writing about two different gods and then they tried to merge them into one. Some of the ideas just don't work well together. Yeah, exactly. And that's basically what it was. In my opinion, you may have a different one, and that's cool. But this would get rid of that problem. I think you would have a lot of people not unsimilar to myself. I don't know if I would become religious if this was the case and it was just the New Testament, because again, I'm agnostic and I don't think there's enough evidence either way to prove or disprove anything. But a lot of people, I know a lot of people who like me appreciate the Bible as a story about how to live a good life, but not as a literal list of rules to follow. And I think more of them would move towards being part of the religion if the Old Testament was removed for the reasons I've spoke about earlier, with the contradictory teachings and the issues with the morality within the Bible. And at the very least, Christians and Catholics would have to deal with a lot less of the gotcha questions that the atheists and others like to challenge you with now. That being said, I do want to say I don't necessarily like gotcha questions. When you use them, you're really just trying to prove you're right, and what real value is there in that except to stroke your own ego? Pat yourself on the back and have a conversation instead. That's my opinion. I know this will shock a lot of people, but especially these days, actually. But the point of a debate was not to win. The point of the debate was to share ideas and create dialogue between the different sides. And maybe that's why both extreme sides, no longer want to debate the other side anymore. They just want to control the narrative for themselves within their group, and so no one else can say anything. And if they do, they try to shut them down. That's actually a really good idea for a video. I think I'm going to expand on that and create a video about that on another day. I know that was a bit of a side from what we're talking about here, but that's a good point. I'm going to have to save that. So for question number 2, what if Jesus was a man versus a divine being? I actually personally prefer the idea of Jesus just being a man. I look at the Bible and see the miracles and think, meh, of course he can do that. He's the Son of God. Why couldn't he walk on water? Why couldn't he bring the dead back to life? Why couldn't he change water into wine? He's divine. He can do whatever he wants. Let me put it to you this way. Let's say there's a large fire in an apartment building and Superman exists. Superman rushes in and saves as many people Or actually, which of these is more impressive? First of all, Superman rushes in and saves as many people as he can, or a regular human firefighter rushes in and saves as many people as they can. Which of those is more impressive? To me, it's a regular human firefighter. Because, yes, Superman could probably save more lives, but he's indestructible and there's no danger to him. So, of course he could do it. It's part of his superpowers. In my opinion, this would be normal for him to do. But when a firefighter does it, when a human firefighter rushes into a burning building, there's always a risk that they could die. There's always a risk to their life. And there's less of a chance that they will be successful in saving anyone compared to Superman. And yet they go in and save people from these burning buildings over and over and over again. And to me, that is far more impressive and motivational than if Superman saved them all. So to me, Jesus being a man who impressed God enough to make him a son of God, to me would be way more inspirational than, Jesus just always being the son of God and doing these magical things, because of course he could. And not only that, but that would mean that any mere human could do enough to truly impress God. It would be well within anyone's grasp to do so. But on the other hand, if Jesus is the Son of God from the beginning, how is anyone going to emulate and duplicate what he did? They can't. He's the only one who did it because he was the Son of God, and no other human can be that. So I think personally it would create much more of a positive spin. Right now it's like we're all sinners from the start and need to work on becoming worthy. Instead, this would make it look more like, well, look what Jesus has attained, and he was just a human. Maybe if we strive to be good, or as good as he was, we can achieve it too. So that's my thoughts on that. Leave a comment below if you want. If not, hey, just think about it for yourself. And I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.